Please follow me on Instagram and Facebook. I've left the links below this video. You can also decide to become one of my patrons. It's a membership site and I will be uploading a lot of demos and workshops there. There's a link to my website as well if you want to see the latest things I'm up to. Enjoy this video. I'm going to show you how to paint the fur of a baby cheetah. Let's get started. Okay, I'm now going to start adding in some more fur over here, and I want to show you how that I create and draw fur. So I'm going to use my yellow ochre. Okay, I have a yellow ochre mixed with burnt sienna over here, and I also use quinacridone gold as a color. But what I'm going to do is I'm working on a dry piece of paper, and I actually need to use a very small brush. So I'm using my 000 and 0 brush. Okay, and I'm going to go back and work in on this area here. So I've made sure this is all dry. Now I come back and I work in lightly over this area. Okay, so I keep working this area, and I use a method of where you use negative and positive space. Now the negative space is the space in between the hair. So that's like you know, it's like when you have your hand, say now like that, that's the negative space. The positive space is actually the finger. The negative space is the shape in between, and if you understand the shape in between the hand, you can actually shape the finger. So that's what I mean by negative space. It's the space around the object you're trying to paint. Now I use that as a method to actually paint my fur. So this fur here, the very light fur, is very positive. Okay, it's a positive shape. So then I go back and I work the negative space. Okay, that's how I do it. I know everybody's different when they're doing fur, but this is how I like to do the fur. They are furry, so even though I'm painting with watercolor, I still like to give the effect of a furry face or a furry body. Okay, so I let it dry, I come back and work with the same color. I'm working with the same color. Okay, and I'm just working back into this area over here. Okay, let me just get more paint on my actual paintbrush, and I do control the water that I put on my brush. I'm just using light strokes, as you can see. I hope you can see that. So there's just light strokes, and the paper is not wet. Okay, and this is how I space the strokes as well, so that I have got some white areas or light areas with dark areas. Okay, so the negative space is the dark areas, the positive space are the light areas. That's how I do the actual fur. Now I'm going to use burnt sienna. Okay, and I'm going to start working very lightly into this area here, so that because there's a bit of a lump here, okay, where the nose is. Okay, the top of the nose, there's a bit of a lump over there, so it's a little bit darker over here in this area, and you'll see I have put masking fluid over here, so it's masked out the white area. And what I'm going to do is I'm just making this area dark. Okay, and you'll see why, because I want to bring this a bit forward. Okay, then it lightens down at the bottom here, so very carefully. I sometimes add water in if I think, you know, it's too dark, then I just smear it or I add water in. Okay, I'm very careful with this section. Okay, not too much on the outside, but here the focal point is the front of the face. There is always a focal point, even in a portrait. So you would emphasize or put a lot of detail in the area where you would have, you want your focal point to be, where you want them to look. Now, most people will look at the eyes. That will be the first thing that people look at, and that's why I like to really concentrate on the eyes. Okay, so I'm making shorter strokes here because there's shorter hair. The hair gets longer as you go to the top. And I'm very aware of this, so I try and vary the lengths of the strokes that I have, okay? And that is very important, to keep changing the length of the actual hair that you're working with here. So as I get to the top, I'm just adding lightly some areas in here, and you'll see eventually it will build up the layers of the hair as I start working over and back over them, okay? But also I'm working in a semicircle, okay, so that I can shape the fur around the actual eye. So I would work with the hair that way and go and work in according to the shape of the face. Okay, so I leave certain areas because I want it to dry. Okay, it has to dry fully before I come back and work over it, because I don't want to smudge this area. I actually am trying to show that there are little hairs over here. As you can see, I'm using very short strokes here, and it's quite sparse. I'm actually trying to put these lines in a sparse area, but I'm also working in the semicircle. Okay, just keep on working out, and as I go out here, it needs to be lighter because it goes into a white area. There's a lot of white fur, and on a cheetah baby there's lots of white fur. Okay, now this is blocked out. There's masking fluid here, it's blocked out white, and that's also blocked out over there. And I'll show you when I lift out the color what it looks like. Now I'm going to use a black color. Just need to find my black color. Alright, I'm now going to use black. Now you can use Mars black, you can use ivory black, but remember, as you can see here, the black actually dries a lot lighter than when you actually put it on, and you need to layer it, and if you want the black to stand out, you have to go back and work over the black quite a few times. I do that. I layer my black. Okay, so now I'm going to slowly look at the direction of the fur that I have here. Okay, and I'm drawing lines but leaving space in between. Okay, because I see long little hairs that are actually going over the black area over here, and then I come back and I work in here. So this hair is in front of the black hair at the back, that black spot. So I try and make sure I keep these white or lighter hairs, okay, and I make them thinner as I go to the top, you'll see. So here I'm also doing light little strokes, moving outward, and just keeping some of those hairs that are on the top. Okay, that's how I actually start doing the dots, because he's got some spots or dots, whichever you want to say. So now I'm just carefully going back and looking. There seems to be a darkish area there, and slowly as you go up, they're very small dots. He's got this little central little furrow, okay, on his head, in between his eyes. Okay, so I'm lightly going back and work into this, but this black line doesn't go all the way to the top. Be very careful of very subtle differences, you know, in an animal's fur, because that is what's going to make it look realistic. I don't suggest that you do like one blanket color. I did that for the bottom, just for the base color. Okay, the bottom layer is the base color. So over here, this little line actually fades in there. Okay, I'm putting yellow ochre there, then I'm coming back with some burnt sienna and I'm adding some burnt sienna in there. Okay, wet in wet. Okay, and I'm just pulling that up with a bit of water and working it back down again. Okay, just fading it out a little bit here at the top. Alright, so now I am going to continue. I want to start working with the black spots. Okay, so I'm just very lightly, they're not very defined here at the top, so I'm just randomly going to put them in here, and I'm trying to watch the shape of the spots. Okay, they're more like little lines at the top here, some little dots. Okay, they're not really defined on this little cheetah, so I'm putting random little black spots there. Okay, I want you to see how I start layering the fur. Alright, now I'm going to take, instead of using yellow ochre, I'm not going to take a color called quinacridone gold. Okay, I really love this color. I've used this color a lot on especially animal fur because it's a very nice soft earthy kind of yellow that you can actually use. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just working negative space in between the hair, and I'm building up the hair. I'm sorry, there's a truck in the back that's busy making some noise, so I hope that doesn't the same sound doesn't translate onto this video. Okay, right, so I'm just carefully going to work some areas here. It is a good thing to leave some areas open. Not every area has to have hair in, okay? Because you want that, it's very busy when you have a lot of little hairs, okay? But the thing is that you need those soft areas that don't have a lot of detail in them as well. Okay. I am going to continue over here with some of that quinacridone gold. Okay, just building up the color using short little strokes there. And even though it doesn't, the color looks very similar to yellow ochre, when it dries it will look different, and it will give a variation to the actual, you know, different hairs that they have and color variations that are within the fur of an animal. So I like to use different tones of a color. So when I mean different tones, I mean different shades of a similar color. Okay, so I sometimes group my colors together. So I'll put the colors together that I think would look great on an animal, and then I use them subtly in the fur. Okay, just to create a bit of contrast as well. I'm going to leave those areas to dry a little bit. You don't want to overwork certain areas, else you will lose the fluffiness as well. And I'm going to show you here, especially here by the cheek. If I can zoom in and show you. If you have a look there, eventually it looks like all the hair is actually joining one another. Okay, so I hope you can see that there. I'm just zooming out a little bit so that we can continue with the top piece of the cheetah. So in this tutorial, I'm just trying to show you how I actually draw or paint fur. And I do mine in a very illustrative way. It's not a wishy-washy watercolor way. I like to put a lot of detail in. Everybody is different, so you must find a method that works for you. I like a lot of detail. I like working very small brushes. As I've said in previous videos, even when I was at art college, my teachers would always say to me, why are you using such a small brush and such a big canvas? And it's because I felt more comfortable doing that. I know it is good to take some pictures or paintings and try and draw in a different way. Use bigger brushes on a bigger canvas or bigger piece of paper, and try and push yourself out of your comfort zone sometimes, just so that you can create new forms of art. I don't just like to stereotype myself and tell myself to one type of artwork or just do animals, because I find then I get bored as an artist. That's number one. And number two, I don't actually upgrade my skills. And as an artist, you must always be challenging yourself. There's nobody there to stand behind you and tell you what to do. Nobody to challenge you. Nobody to motivate you. As an artist, you motivate yourself. You do as much work as you are motivated to do. So you've got to find ways to motivate yourself. And for me, the way to motivate myself is to always do something different. I come back to the things that I like doing. I love painting animals, so I do that, but I give it a break sometimes. Because as you can see, it's a lot of detail and a lot of concentration, okay? So my eyes get tired as well. And when you're doing art, remember to take breaks in between, especially for your eyes. And you don't want eyesight problems, okay? And also your back. You can have pain in your back and your neck, which can give you a headache. So I have learned to actually be balanced about my artwork and how I actually do my art. And I do things that interest me. I don't just paint because I want to sell the art and I want to sell it to people. Yes, it's important to know what people want to buy, but if you want to be an artist and you have your own expression and your own way of viewing the world and showing people what you see, because this is a visual language, remember. It's not a spoken language. This is the visual language, where you're using images to show people how you see the world. So, you know, develop your own language and style. And the only way you can do that is by doing. Okay, and experimenting and trying new things as an artist. Don't become stale. I know that I worked with a gallery many years ago, and I was selling my art at galleries, and eventually I was getting quite bored with it, because the gallery owner sold one painting, okay, of flowers, and then he wanted like 10 or 20 of the same type of thing because it sold. And it was becoming like a production line, and I didn't want to paint flowers after that, because after painting 20 paintings of flowers just so that you can sell them, it actually, you lose your love of art, and you actually don't know why you're painting something you've painted before. So each piece of artwork should be unique, okay? Because you as an artist, you're feeding your soul, not just everybody else's, okay? So as you can see, I'm working. I change where I work because it's wet here, okay? I want it to dry. So with layering, I always layer my watercolors. I like to just slowly build up the areas. And as you see now, what I'm starting to do is I will now start layering over this hair, okay? I'm going to take a slightly bigger brush, a size 2, okay? And with the size 2, I'm going to take my yellow ochre now. And I'm going to look at certain areas where I see the fur is a little more dense, like here. And I'm going to put a light wash over it. And I'll tell you why I do the light wash. Because it solidifies the area. You'll see. When this starts drying over here, okay, that area will look dense. It will look like it's got shape. For me, that's how I do it. Okay, so I'm going to put a light wash here, and the wash is over the hair. Okay, so I first put the... Okay, so now I am just going to, I've let this area dry because that's important. I don't want to paint over and over it when it's wet, because all it will do is blend with each other and smear. So I'm now going to just start layering. This is an important part for me. I need to be very careful with this. So I'm going to take some burnt sienna, okay, and now I'm going to work over burnt sienna with burnt sienna here. I'm going to do a light wash, okay, very carefully. I'm very careful at this stage. Okay, I'm just doing little areas here and pulling the paint up. Doing the same thing here, pulling the paint. Right, I pull the paint upwards. Okay, working. I'm now putting some, working with a negative space, working around like this. Okay, just building up that color. Right, because there's different shapes in this little cheetah's face. Okay, and now I want to try and just define some of the hair that's here. So I'm going to work with those previous lines that I put up there, put down on the paper, and I'm just adding a little bit of the burnt sienna in. Okay, I'm not working with burnt umber. Burnt umber is a different color. Burnt umber is a dark brown, okay, like Van Dyke brown, and they can become very flat. You can use those colors, but when they dry they flatten and it actually looks very dull. So I'm very careful. I'd rather use a Van Dyke brown or a sepia brown instead of burnt umber, depending on what I'm painting. I like to mix up my own browns, and I'll show you how I do that. Okay, so now I need to mix a black. So instead of using Mars black or ivory black, what I'm going to use is a mixture of ultramarine blue, okay, and burnt sienna. So I'm already using burnt sienna. So now to make the brown, I'm not using burnt umber. I'm using ultramarine. I'm going to show you here, and I'm going to mix my burnt sienna in, and you will see it starts making a black, and it's really nice. You don't have to mix the color up too much. Don't mix and mix. Allow the colors to blend, but not too much, because you still want the blue and the burnt sienna to show through. It makes it very interesting. So you can either mix it up and then apply it, or I'm going to show you another way of doing it. So I'm just adding in some of the little bits that are there, the little bits of hair. They're more like little speckles here. They're not really little dots. Okay, not yet. It's not a full-grown cheetah. Okay, so just lightly looking at this and adding it in. So that's to make a black. To make the black, okay, and then I start adding in little bits of hair here, just to define this area, okay, because it's around the eyes, and I want the focal point to be by the eyes. So I'll go back, and I may have lost some of the detail here, so I add some of the detail back in. Okay, this is a bit of a lid, so there is going to be a little bit of shadow here, and I like to add the shadow in. Okay, just to give a little bit of dimension to this, the outside of the eye. Okay, I'm working very carefully over here. That is going to be too dark. So The way that I do this is I take toilet paper and I'll dab that out, because you can make a mistake in watercolor. Okay, you can put an area or say to yourself, oh, I don't want that. So what I do is I scrub it with water, I press it down with paper, and look, I lift it out. So you can lift out color, and it's a good way, it's a good effect also that you can apply in your paintings. Okay, sometimes at the top here I do that as well. I lift out some of the colors if it is too busy. Okay, so it gives it a soft effect when you actually do this, when you go back and take the paint out. And the thing is, with watercolor, it stains the paper, so whatever color you put on, it will stain the paper that color. So because this is a yellow ochre, it's actually stained that color. Okay, now I'm going to now take this mixture I made. I'm going to create some more. These burnt sienna, I'm going to add ultramarine blue in. Okay, just mixing it up there. I hope you can see it. Right, now this area has dried, and what I want to do is I want to just lightly put some of these in here, just to break it up a bit. Okay, create a bit of contrast here. There we go. And I'm going to start putting in some of the little dots over here, because they start having their little black dots. Okay, you can see that. I'm just checking. And we're going to work this back. I'm going to darken this area. You see, it's become very, very faded. So I'm going to use my ultramarine, I'm going to use my burnt sienna, and I'm creating quite a dark mixture. Okay, and now what I'm going to try and do is I'm going to start working this back here. Right, it's looking a bit brown. Okay, I don't want this to be brown because it's black. That marking there is black. So now I'm taking ultramarine blue and I'm just adding it in directly onto the paper, and you'll see it darkens this marking over here. Okay, right, so that's how I do fur. I want to show you when I take this off. Okay, I've got to be careful now because this area is wet, but I want to take off this masking fluid, and I want you to see why I use masking fluid. Okay, just need to pull that off and around. Now always make the masked out area much bigger than it actually is. Okay, and the reason is because I can work back into the white area, but if I don't have enough white, areas blocked out, I won't be able to work back into that. See, so there's the white marking, but it's a bit big. Okay, so I do not like to use white gouache, especially if I'm painting on an original artwork, original watercolor. I don't put white on there. I don't use white pen, and I don't use gouache because I'm not doing mixed media and I'm not doing prints. If you do prints, you can do that, but over time it becomes flaky. The white gouache becomes flaky and it can yellow, and I've had that in the past, and that's why I try not to use gouache on these areas. I prefer to use the whites of the paper. Okay, now I'm going to take my yellow ochre, and I'm going to slowly work back into the white area, just so that it doesn't have this harsh line. If it has a harsh line, it's not going to look right. As you can see, I'm working back over this, and that hair will come down like that. see, if I can always work back into the white, but I can't work the white back into the stained paper. That is why I always make a bigger white area. Okay, so now what I can do is I can work into the white, I can work back into the white and break up the white with little lines. Okay, and I see that that black line over there has now been taken out again because there was masking fluid on it. So I'm just going to come back and work back into this area. I'm going to work with black or with my mixture of ultramarine blue and burnt sienna. Okay, and I'll wait for my areas to dry because I want to see whether they're going to dry properly, they're going to dry lighter. You know, you don't know, so you have to just be patient with watercolor. Just adding a little bit of shadow there, just slightly bringing it down, and adding some here as well, so that the eye looks like it's a little bit, you know, sunken in there. Okay, and I use water and I bring that down. Okay, like that. Just water. There we go. So that's how I do fur. I do come back and layer some more areas, and when I put the background in, I've put a lot of masking fluid on here, and I will show you how I actually add a background in with the masking fluid on, and how I work back into the white areas so that the whole picture actually makes sense. Okay, so there we go. I hope you enjoyed this video.